Daisuke Ishiwatari is a rare multi-talented artist in the gaming industry. Not only does he create captivating art, but he's also the visionary behind Guilty Gear, a fighting game shaped by his unique perspective. Beyond that, he composes intense metal and rock themed in-game music. And while his art may not always be technically perfect, it possesses the most crucial quality an artist can offer: soul. When we break down and analyze Daisuke Ishiwatari's art style, it becomes clear that his characters are brought to life by an unmistakable energy. To quote him, "I always try to make sure that the eyes look like eyes, but I often make mistakes. Sometimes it looks like the characters are dead inside, even when it's the main character. While the eyes are the primary feature to express personality and liveliness, there's much more to it than that." However, it's important to note that as Ishiwatari's responsibilities grew and his team expanded over the years, he became less involved in the hands-on art creation, focusing more on the initial conceptualization of the character designs. That's why when discussing his art style for this breakdown, I primarily focus on his illustrations from the early Guilty Gear era rather than his later works. He draws the eyes large, with a certain tension in the irises and eyelids. Also, he makes the irises big and adds in quite the catchlights to emphasize the liveliness of the characters. The eyes also include details like tear ducts and whimpers. After close inspection, he does try to make the eyebrows unique for each character as well. When we check the other facial features, the nose, mouth and lips are expressive and clearly visible. Overall, Ishiwatari uses realistic facial features and turn them into the more sharp manga style we all know and love. I think this semi-realism is also evident in his hairstyles. Sometimes he uses those typical big chunks, other times he details the hair quite a lot, mainly depending on the character. Without a doubt, in this regard he is deliberate on how to create characters that look distinct and unique instead of stereotypical. In addition, Ishiwatari likes to make the hair floaty, with a lot of volume, adding catchlights with effective light shading. His anatomy is interesting. Okay, so first off, he likes to push the dynamic scenes that really stretch the perspectives. And he does this by emphasizing the front part, leading all the way towards the back end. Also, Ishiwatari tends to keep a lot of tension in the character limbs and energy in their gestures, creating these cool and dynamic poses. And I personally don't have any problems with that at all. On first glance at least. The thing is, the art looks good and expressive, but upon closer inspection, the character's anatomy can appear lacking, with some unsettling proportions. In all honesty though, this is a bit of a nitpick. Since the art looks good at first glance, it doesn't matter much when the characters aren't perfectly symmetrical. After all, he's a character designer, not a mangaka who has to draw the same character in dozens of panels. Interestingly, fighting games often feature exaggerated limbs, hands and feet proportions to make the action easier to follow in a split second. This emphasizes is intentional in their art. However, in Guilty Gear, this isn't as pronounced. The sprites don't highlight the features as much, because the main focus of the animation is often in the character's weapons, rather than just the fist and feet. That said, personally I like Ishiwatari's light coloring style as seen in the old school entries, especially compared to some of the other Guilty Gear installments. And while there's no video footage of him showing how he did this back in the day, I am delighted to share there was a step-by-step art process explanation in one of the Guilty Gear art books. Here, Daisuke noted that he often tends to switch between male and female characters and seldom does backgrounds. His tools are Copic markers, color pencils and watercolor, starting with thin ink pens for the outlines. He tends to work multiple days on the art piece in the little time he has. He first does a rough sketch, following the figure and frame process. Then he cleans up the lines to get a neat look, avoiding an overwhelm of information. He also tries to keep the perspective consistent. In this case, he used an outline of the frame on a separate piece. He draws one side, folds the paper and traces the other for consistency. He continuously adds details like wristbands, while correcting little details to ensure that his character's physical appearance is just right. Before using Copic markers, he copies the art at half scale to quick check which color composition will work. Ishiwatari then uses color pencils to draw the soft outlines, noting that this step, especially for girls, makes their skin appear softer. This process takes some time and is sometimes omitted. However, Ishiwatari suggested that it's important to emphasize the characters, so keep them the focal point. In this case, the color theme was on the brown side of the spectrum, so he chose yellow to make Mei more distinctive. He added brown texture for the hair, debating which hair color will be the best, without overlapping too much. He's very deliberate about the details, trying to emphasize the shading to make the clothes more three-dimensional and easily processed for in-game models. This in-depth texturing also accounts for materials like metal, wood, and the fabric of the sofa in the background. Near the end, he does the eyes, emphasizing them to make them look alive. Also, he does a lot of detailing, emphasizing certain lines and shapes, highlighting the areas he wants the observer to notice. Nonetheless, he did mention that he used too much white in this image. To me, this shows how much effort and patience traditional art requires, and like Ishiwatari said, it's a process of trial and error. Earlier I mentioned that his art might not always be technically perfect, but it undeniably has soul. By this I don't mean something spiritual or unattainable. Rather, his characters feel alive, as if they are truly living and breathing in the moment of an illustration. This effect comes from his ability to draw eyes and gestures convincingly, hitting all the right marks, so to say. I believe this is something any artist can achieve with experience. The more you observe in life, the more attuned you become to nuances and details. And with all that Ishiwatari pursues, his extreme experience is clearly reflected in his works. As for character designs, like most fighting game artists, he really tends to make all the characters unique, adding little quirks here and there. He said that the original 10 characters were mainly inspired by the manga Bastards, a series that he was totally into at the time. Music was of course a massive passion of it all as well. Rock and metal come to mind first, but he noted that he listens to all kinds of music. Moreover, he said that he was a huge fan of Queen. And in one of his interviews there was a comment about Soul Bad Guy was based on Freddie Mercury. Of course, there are quite a lot of these trivia details on these characters. Anyways, Ishiwatari composed most of the character theme music himself. Actually, he draws inspiration from the Beatles, Slayer, death metal and Japanese music. His dedication to Guilty Gear is intense to say the least. I mean, he said that during development he was living in the office for over a year without going home. He takes long walks to brainstorm story scenes and prefers an indie approach to development due to the rising industry cost. He even did Soul Bad Guy's voice acting because they couldn't pay the cost of the voice actor Koichi Yamadera, which to Ishiwatari was the perfect fit for Soul. His team has seen quite the difficult times with budgets and workload. To paraphrase him, it's useless to complain about the current situation, we must go forward. Ishiwatari emphasizes maintaining the Guilty Gear spirit no matter the circumstances, which to him is all about discovery and player engagement. In contrast, a friendly fighting game like BlazBlue is more focused on pure entertainment according to the director. Also, Ishiwatari noted that his design process is iterative. relying on continuous adjustments rather than sudden inspiration. He wants to keep going, as this will push through new creative influxes. To quote him, talking about spontaneous flashes of inspiration, they happen to me sometimes. But usually it's like slowly straining a soup. When creating another design, I work rambling like that. Maybe this, or maybe that. A piece of this? Should I insert this here? This is my style named Something Will Come Up Anyway. It is really rare when something flashes and I suddenly come up with a ready design. I love this because it works, especially if you're in a bit of a pit. Creating can be hard. Just push it and go with whatever. Though Ishiwatari may not be personally drawn to fashion, his keen observation of people feeds into his designs, reflecting his ability to draw inspiration from the world around him. What stands out most is his deep involvement in every facet of development, art, music and even coding, embodying a true multidisciplinary artist. His belief in moving forward without complaints is not just a work ethic, it's a philosophy that inspires us to push our creative boundaries. Ishiwatari's approach reminds us that as artists, we're not confined to a single medium. Our creativity can and should transcend those limits, allowing us to craft our own unique visions. I'm light novel author GPFus, and learning more about Daisuke Ishiwatari was a blast. Actually, wanted to do many more types of games, shoot 'em ups and even first person shooters, and even movies, and even being an actor. Yeah, he joked about that life is too short. I agree.